June 25th, 2023. It started like any other day. I woke up, I grabbed my phone, checked my DMs and Instagram. Curiously, I had one from Lynn, also known as Abnormal Minifigures. He was asking for my help in writing some English, of which, of course, I said yes. Not soon after he sent me what he wished for me to proofread, my jaw dropped. I had to read 3 times just to make sure it was legit. Little did I know that this would set in motion one of the biggest stories to hit the customs community.
Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing. Bring me the next shiny new thing.
Welcome everyone to the Big Bad Figcast. I'm your host Brett, also known as Geek Over 40, where we talk about all things custom Lego. Today's episode is one we've been working towards for some time. Let it be known that Rex Minibrick did not return our request for comment. So let's go now onto the show. So Lynn, or Abnormal's message to me had declared that he had hit his limit. Rex was MIA and owed him money for figs long since finished, and he was tired of getting blamed for something his reseller dropped the ball on. You see, how it usually works is that resellers hold on to the pre-order money and pay the brand once the figures are finished. Once paid, the brand then ships the figs to the reseller for distribution. In this case, Abnormal was sitting on finished stock of about 10 different figs that Rex had yet to send payment for. The message Abnormal wished to craft was to encourage people to try and get a refund from Rex. And if that didn't work, customers with proof of purchase could reacquire finished stock available by purchasing a second time via Tracy at 50% off. This is the most loss he could take and still stay in business. Well, I immediately reached out to my friend and fellow podcast contributor, Mark Bricks. Marcus and I agreed this message could not go out. It would hit at the very core of the community. Customers could possibly start second-guessing all their pre-orders, possibly initiating chargebacks with cancellations with other resellers like Tracy and Tier 1, and thus sink the foundation of, well, everything. So, how do you handle this? I'm not a brand, I'm just a customer. Who would have the perspective of both the business and consumer side of things that could offer some advice? Who else has something to lose in this? The first name to come to mind is our guest today. He's the owner and designer behind PhoenixCustoms LLC, Adam. Thank you, Adam, for coming on board to help us tell the story.
Yeah, no problem.
Also joining us today is Phil, also known as Phil Fat Cat Bricks.
Yo.
Usual yo, nothing more than just yo.
Yeah. Yo.
Now, Adam, I DM'd you on what was going on, and you also agreed that we need to put a pause on this announcement.
Yeah. I mean, just like you, when I saw that text, I had to read it a few times because it was shocking just to hear, first of all, that there was that much being owed to a particular brand and that hadn't been settled at that. I'd never even imagined something like that would be possible. And to know that Rex hadn't paid for all that was news to me. Nothing ever like that was being heard from, that I heard of. So it's when I heard that and I saw the message, obviously I was shocked right away. So and I thought the same thing as you, is that something has to be done to help the situation. I knew there was a lot of times it's like, there's things that are miscommunicated. Sometimes there's business people that, they're not very upfront about things that are going on or how things are going and they don't check in. I thought it was just like a lot of miscommunications that needed to happen. And then, as this kind of wore on, we saw this was kind of a bigger deal than we thought. But initially my first thought, let's just solve the problem in front of us, which is with Abnormal, and contacting them and talking with them and seeing what the situation actually is, and then trying to problem solve between them and Rex, who wasn't the greatest, and it's obvious now was never really that great at communicating in general. But there was still hope at that point that things could be fixed. So that was kind of the way I looked at it when you texted me. Is it was shocking. We had to do something about it. And just like I always think of anything in life or even in business, is try to look at how can you solve this and move on. So that's where I was at that point.
Right. And like you said, we learned it was a bigger problem than we originally noticed. I had reached out to both Jaka and Crosscheck to learn that they too were owed money by Rex. This is where I had the realization that brands don't necessarily talk to each other all that often.
Nope, very true.
Looking back, if there was a group chat or a central forum where brands could discuss these closed-door matters, it would have been realized that Rex was becoming a problem for everyone. An effort could have been made sooner, as folks would have realized that they weren't the only ones being affected. Upon further investigation, I found that Crosscheck was owed a near 5-digit amount. Jaka was owed a substantial amount as well. And that's the point where you got to wonder, why was Rex allowed to go on for so long like this? And the answer is it's complicated. I mean, at the time, Rex was the #1 Hong Kong reseller. Everyone bought through Rex. When he did a secondhand market drop, it was a frenzy to log in and snag what you could. Never in a million years would one predict this situation. TLDR, Rex had a great reputation. And again, I feel these brands knew that they weren't the only ones affected. And I think if they did, they would have spoken up sooner. Adam, can you talk to me a little bit about what your efforts were to organize these brands and hope for a cohesive effort to get this resolved?
Yeah, sure. So it was like you said, it was kind of an eye opener, especially when we started hearing from, like, when I heard from you, and then when I confirmed that with some of these guys when I messaged them individually, like at Jock and Crosscheck, just to see, is this true and what's going on with that, and what numbers are we talking about? The first thing obviously was to get in touch with Rex to see what he's doing about it, and to figure this out. Because, like you said, I mean, Rex at the time, I know it's hard to realize this now that we're in this new era and how things have changed since then. But at the time, we got to realize that Rex up to that point was always on point with things. I'd never had any problems with them. I mean, it was mostly he was always overreaching, trying to do things. Like, he always had big picture ideas, and I'd kind of have to bring him back down to ground. So he was also very kind of aloof when it came to communication. So I always thought that was kind of the only things I ever saw. But at the time, he was winning on a Goodfellas page. He was winning all the contests about who was the top reseller and who was the best person to buy from, and he had a great reputation. So this was, at the time, I thought, just a bump that we had to get over until we saw the numbers we were talking about from each one of these
Well,
brands.
there was absolute trust in Rex. I mean, he built that reputation over literal years. He'd gone to the point where he was the reseller,
Yeah,
at the time.
and
So it
he
was
bought
an
the
absolute
most.
shock.
Yeah, and he was buying the most quantities from most of these brands too. So I mean, it's because people were going to his website and buying so much. Yeah, it's crazy to think now of how that was able to go so sideways, and it still just doesn't make any sense to me. But at the time, so what we did, I mean, talking with you, Brett, and working with these different groups, the first thing was to try to come up with some sort of plan to see how could we solve this. And obviously, the first one that came to bring this to us was Abnormal, so it was only fair that we tried to resolve his situation first. And so I tried to talk with Rex about what's possible, what could he do in the meantime to not burn out all of his funds, but still get us back to a plan of, like, getting paid to everybody. And so we came up with a plan. Abnormal would be paid a certain amount by a certain date, and then he'd be paid the next one, and then we'd rotate to someone else, and then we'd rotate back, and we just try to get everybody slowly paid up. The goal was by, at the time, was something like at the end of the year, we'd have almost everybody paid up except for maybe one or two of the brands, because I think there was like 4 or 5 brands that needed to be paid back. Um, and we actually made some good progress, I think, over that summer, because I think it happened, was that March or something? What was that when I first came, or April? I can't remember. But anyway, during the summer, I remember we had certain payments, and those came in abnormal. Looked like he was doing well getting those. I mean, he was delayed sometimes, and we'd have to get on him about it, but he was paying, and it seemed like we had a good progress going, and he was going to get back up to speed as far as I could tell. But then I think as in the fall, things were starting to kind of go sideways. I noticed where he was a couple weeks late for the next payments, or wasn't communicating with Abnormal at all, which those things were starting to get worrying. And I started to try to contact Rex more often about trying to get on top of that. And I noticed that he wasn't communicating as often with me anymore either. So a few things were starting to get kind of tagged, to me at least, or flagged, I should say, as worrying signs that never happened before. And so that's where I think things started to get a little worrying, was middle to late fall of that year.
Right, right. Over the next few months, leading into the fall of 2023, Rex paid off Abnormal, but still in the end fell a bit short, leaving Lynn to eat the remaining costs. This prioritization of Abnormal being paid meant the others weren't. So Tier 1, Crosscheck, Jaka was still waiting for their turn. Eventually, fall turned to winter, and come January 2024, everything collapsed. Having not received any payments during all this time forced Jaka's hand. They went public with their planned arrangements similar to Abnormal's, with customers repurchasing through Tracy. People were understandably angry, but brands were doing all they could to cut costs and still stay in business. As for PhoenixCustoms, there was still the matter of the Spider-Man figs he designed for Rex. Delayed already because of COVID, now their fate was called into question as well. The current updated test prints for the new factory were coming out, and they looked terrible. Now, Adam, if I recall correctly, the original factory Rex used during production shuttered during COVID, correct?
Yeah, yep. That's what I was told. Yep.
And then can you walk us through what steps were taken after that? I think I remember
Yeah.
you mentioning Rex didn't take your advice, or who was
Yeah,
using a new
so
one that wasn't used to printing on Lego?
yeah, and there's actually a couple things there. So the first thing was that at least if there was any success out of that is that we were able to help Abnormal get most of his payments in. I think there was only one last payment that he didn't get to. So the good news was at least Abnormal got some good help out of that. I just felt during that time we were arranging with Jaka to, because there's kind of it's a two-pronged thing going on. There was that, but also the problems we were having because of the fact that his original production shuttered during COVID, and he didn't quite share with me his plan to deal with that until about summer to late fall. I found out that he was going with a new printer, and they sent some test prints to him. I think it was late spring, summer of that year of the arachnids, and they were super disappointing. And I was like, are these guys amateurs? I mean, it looked literally like someone just started up a pad printing company. And
Just out of curiosity, Adam, what did Rex think of these test prints? Was he okay with them? Or?
so he was not okay with them either. So he went back, and I think he was on the same page with me in the beginning. He was,
Mm.
but I think, I'll talk about it in just a minute. But yeah, so he was showing me these test prints that I was super disappointed in, saying like, what's going on? This doesn't even look like a group that's ever printed on Lego or has any idea how to do this. That was taking place at the same time as the payments, and so right around fall when we were trying to set up Jaka's first payment. And Jaka was like waiting for them to get set up too, because we wanted to set up a plan to kind of rotate with Abnormal, since he was mostly paid at that point, and we were ready to switch to go back and forth with him, and then kind of get the payments all set up. I was coming to Jaka saying that we were having problems with this printer, and I'm worried if the next test prints don't come in much better, that I'll need to find someone else for Rex to print with to try to problem solve this, because maybe he just hasn't thought it through. That this isn't worth the money to pay to these people since they don't have the experience. And so we were kind of chatting it up about that, and then Jaka was saying, it'd be good if to kind of guarantee that first payment from Rex. Let's get if you do need a printer, let's have him guarantee that first payment, and then let's get maybe the test prints with the arachnids if we need to set up with Jaka. So that was kind of a nice out in case the next set of prints weren't good. And then they did come back in the fall, and the prints again weren't. They were better, but they still weren't to the level anywhere. I mean, we're talking like they looked like they were straight out of like when you buy the knockoff brand stuff, and they look like the prints just don't line up at all, and they look like a mess. That's what it looked like. It looked like he almost had like a knockoff brand printing these for him, who they don't care if things are aligned or if things are bleeding off the edge or things like that. And I was just like, this is not going to work. So immediately when I saw that next group of prints, I started talking with Rex about like as we say I mean, here in the US we say it's kind of like a come to Jesus moment. Like, let's talk about this and like make a decision, because this is not working. And that Jaka has set up something that maybe let's go with him. But in order to do that, you need to get your first payment to him at the same time. And so that was set up, and Jaka was nice enough to, in the middle of their production, get that set up for the first two arachnids at least. And so that was our plan. And everything sounded like it was working. Rex was on board with it because he could trust Jaka's printers, but I just didn't. I could sense there wasn't like a commitment. Like he wasn't ready to say 100% yes to get it going. And so we were kind of waiting for Rex to give that first payment and to set up the time and date that he's going to do that, so we can get the print set up. And then that's where. And I want to say this is October or November. I'd have to look at the emails. I can't remember, but it was around that time that we were setting it. We were going to set it up with Jaka, and he was going to pay his first payment to them and pay the last one to Abnormal. And that's, I think, where we noticed that there was a problem, because he was taking him extremely long to get back to us. Because I think Jaka even, he sent the first two figures cost estimate to us to approve, and then I sent in the files, I think, even to get that started. And so all the wheels were greased and everything lined up to have that happen. But I think if I had to guess, and obviously I can't confirm that because Rex never said anything about that, but if I had to guess, that he must have put a lot of money down up front with this new company, and he wasn't able to get it back or something, because it was odd that he wasn't just jumping on that. Like, he should have if it wasn't the case. And so I think that was part of what went sideways with all this. Is he must have had money.
Most of the pre-order money went.
Well, I don't know. I because here's the thing: is Rex, I know, would send and I know he was working with other brands and other his own brand on stuff, because he'd sometimes sent me all these big plan things he had. So I was one. If I had to guess, he must have had a whole bunch of stuff invested in that company that went poof during COVID. Like custom parts that were being made. Because I know he showed me this complex design for a vulture figure that he was going to do. That was more complex even than the one from
Mini
was it?
Gazer.
Yeah, Mini Gazer. And he was working on that. And he was over the top with all of his big plans for different things, especially his own brand. And then obviously, if he's switching to a new, I don't know if he had to pay up front or what it was, but it was really hard to get him to say no to the group he was working on and officially switch to Jaka. And I thought we had got everything convinced to do that, and he just never followed up on that. And that's where the communication became super spotty. It was around that time. And Jaka couldn't reach him. I couldn't reach him at times. And then in December, he came back saying, "Oh, let's do this. I'm ready to go. I can do it." And then we just waited and waited for payments. And I think Jaka, I'm sure, got frustrated because their production was waiting for that. They were going to start, and Crosscheck was waiting for their last payment. And it just kind of just never followed up. And that's where things, I think, really went sideways. So when I look back, I mean, everything up until fall of that year was working and we were getting things back on track. It's just all of a sudden that fall, that's when we noticed, I think, that he just was not the same and he wasn't responding. And stuff just went sideways from that point. And
So,
yeah, go ahead.
so what was the catalyst for finally saying no more Rex? I mean, because some people feel you waited too long to cut Rex off.
Yeah, and
So, like,
if I had, I mean, here's the thing is, I mean, obviously, hindsight is 2020. If I would have gone back and known that, I think the first thing I should have asked him was, and I don't know if he ever would have been this forward with me, was to ask him, what is your financial situation completely? Like, where are you invested? What's the problems here? Because I think if I would have understood that better, and knowing all the customers that work with him, if I would have known that, and that some people still could have got their money back, I would have right away just told, Abnormal and all those guys to maybe tell their customers to get those refunds from Rex. But at the time, I didn't see that as an issue. I thought this was something we could
It
get
would have
through.
still
I
been
think the
hard to
time that
believe, wouldn't it? The other day, like I said, there was absolute trust in Rex. So even we all knew that Rex could go quiet on occasion. He did it to individual customers, so there's no reason to think he wouldn't do it to a larger customer like yourself or a collaborator. So even then, I bet it was impossible to think that Rex would actually physically just disappear. You'd think at some point he would turn around and said, "Look, I've really fucked up here," and explain things. But
the other funny thing, I mean, here's the thing is, when people see the amounts that were due to people, it's super shocking even to me, because I deal with some of those numbers in this business, because each time you print a figure, depending on how complex it is, it's big payments that have to come in from resellers. And Rex would routinely make big payments on things. So it wasn't like, I didn't think that he couldn't come back from where the money numbers were. Because the thing that's different between, I've never had a late payment from him. Whenever I said there was something due, if it was, the payment, the way that I structured it, and I still do with all my resellers, is they have a week from the time of the order is made with me to pay up. Otherwise, I cancel their orders, and they know within a week if they don't get that payment, and I cancel. So Rex was never late. Maybe a few days, and that was it. And he'd always make large payments. So these kind of things, once we got him on a schedule, I figured he's just going to make those payments. He'll be a little late, maybe here or there, by a couple days, but he won't be weeks late, with these big payments. And I think I felt from my history with him and the payment numbers he was making to me and to other brands, this is a doable thing. And so I didn't see this as a problem. Obviously, the numbers, if those got out, people would get scared. And I think people don't understand, in a pre-ordered system that we had, it's almost like stocks, like once a scare goes into the community, you want to dump your stocks and get out, right? I think people don't understand that if that information got out, number one, or if people were told this, that Rex was a no good, he wasn't able to pay for those things, I think the scare would have basically emptied out every single brand would have been done by that point, because of the amount of money that was invested in Rex especially. He was the number one reseller. Most of our stuff came from them. It would have been hard to recover.
Well, not just every brand, but every reseller. I mean, Tracy would probably get hit. Tier 1 would get hit.
Yep. And at those times they weren't, they were still big, but they weren't Rex big, like it's almost like if Apple and Amazon failed and they just closed shop in the United States, that'd be a huge hit,
Yeah, Tracy wasn't nearly as large as she was. She was still, well,
she was growing, obviously, and
She just started her own website. She broke off from Crazy Minifigs.
Yep. And at the time, I remember yeah, and I remember at the time she was growing, but she wasn't at the level she is now, at the time. And I think people don't remember that Rex was quite big at that time. Anyways, long story short is I think when looking back, if the point that I knew that I was starting to get worried personally was late fall of that year, once he started being really late with his payments and really late and not responding to some of our messages and emails, which that was not like him. I mean, he was aloof, I'll give him that, but he wasn't someone that would ignore a message for more than a week. And I think Jock and I were starting to get worried about that, especially with him setting up those prints for us, which was very nice of him. And I was hoping to get his first payment in so that he not only, get some of that money that he was owed, but just to get everything right with him also and to get things set up so that we could solve that problem. But I think the biggest issue, again, was Rex started showing signs that he was kind of teetering. He wasn't responding, and that was not like him. And what was the final call on that? I think it's when Jaka wasn't getting his pay, which I don't blame him at all because he set up those prints with us. He was supposed to get paid right back in, I think it was October or something like that, or November, and Abnormal was still owed. And then out of nowhere, he came back. I think it was in late December or early January. I think out of nowhere, after a month of not talking to anybody, came back with some stupid message to me about more prints from that printer for the arachnids, which I was like, I thought we moved on from that. And when he sent that, I asked him about it. And the next thing I know, he was like, well, I have to get my prints here. And I was just like, oh my God, this is something serious. He must have had a whole bunch invested in this company and he can't get it out of there or something.
With Rex out of the picture, how did Brothers in Tier 1 come into the scene?
Good question. So obviously we all kind of went scrambling once we found out that number one, he was unable to pay Jaka and Abnormal, and because we'd ask him to get that payment in, I think we all realized that we're gonna have to kind of scramble to get things done. And I can't remember the first thing that for me as a brand, I was like, well, my things that I have in there is I have to get these arachnids finished and somehow. And so I almost think we're kind of skipping a beat here. I'm trying to think of the next thing after that, I think was people, finding out that Rex was having these issues and what are we going to do about it? And the mad scramble that happened after that, I think right off the
around
bat.
the same time, people were suddenly starting not getting the other figures from Rex as well, and he was going quiet there. So I think there was a certain point where the two issues met in the middle. There was doubts, on the front-facing side of things from people with their just regular orders, and there were whispers, behind the scenes about, the pre-orders. Like I said, at some point they both just sort of met, and people started putting two together a little bit.
Well, it was when Jaka finally made their announcement saying this is the problem. They made it public.
Yeah,
And that's what started the mass scramble because they made their arrangement with Tracy where people could buy back their figures at a certain percentage.
Yep.
They could repurchase.
Yeah, I think even before that, though, for a few weeks, there were a lot of rumblings in the background. It was never sort of anywhere specific. It was just here and there, the odd stories, people questioning things, that sort of stuff.
Yep. I think all of the brands were kind of thrown for a loop of what do we do with all this stuff that we have that we didn't get paid for. And I think that's their first thought was maybe, I don't know if Tracy offered them to maybe sell on their website, and that was like at least some money coming in and a way to get money back. But yeah, I think there was like some sort of reaction where people were trying, and I think all of us agreed that we have to kind of get some sort of money going to get things paid for and to keep going so that things don't shutter or stop. And so I think that was the big thing. And then obviously, I think a lot of brands realize that this is not the right way to go about it, especially I think when we chatted to Brett about like, what is this reaction people are having to the reselling of some of these figs that Rex wasn't buying, and that this isn't the way to go. We can't this isn't helpful for the community. This isn't going to help them get their figures. They're going to lose them, some of them that can't rebuy these. And it wasn't fair. And I think that's where Brothers and Tier 1 came in, was after, initially was going to be we were going to do something similar to the other brands where we were going to resell some of the ones that Rex didn't buy. But then I think we realized we can't do that. That's not right. It's just going to hurt too many people that can't do that. And so what we talked about was, okay, if we're going to get these figures printed, how are we going to go about doing that? And so Tier 1 was nice enough to say, I will host the shipping of these figures when they're completed. I will handle all the shipping and contact with customers for that end. and then Brothers being with their experience printing and production, and I worked with them that they'd be able to do the production end of it. And so that's where they came in, because they said they'd be fine with doing that. They even said that they'd bring, that they'd take the same exact cost and price that Rex had originally, which was, what was it by then, 2 years before that? And obviously inflation was a bitch at the time because of COVID. So they were taking a hit on that just to get it done, because they knew how important it was to move past this Rex issue, that they were going to take a hit on the production side money wise, that they would make less than what it cost to make these figures, but were willing to do that because they knew how big of a deal it was and how much it hurt. But we didn't know the size of it until we got to the next thing, which, I mean, I know we'll probably talk about next here.
Well, yeah, exactly. Because now these Spideys have fallen into a situation that the production still need to be paid for. And the top question to be asked was, okay, but how many do they need to be made?
Right, exactly.
Rex never passed on his pre-order database. Plus, like many resellers, there were side deals and promises he made to others whom he didn't plan on invoicing until they were completed. Simply put, we didn't know who was owed a minifigure. And then, quick side, not only was it just Rex, but two other PCB resellers, Korean Minifigs and Young Bricks, also disappeared with their order information, which just exacerbated the problem. So at this point, we opted to make a Google form, and I helped offer to advertise, come fill out this form. But I knew it wasn't enough to do alone. My extended reach, though it's quite large, it wasn't enough. We still needed help. I pulled in a small contingent of seasoned collectors whom I trust to secrecy, and kind of gave them the backstory. And I requested their help to advertise the campaign and gather customer info. These folks were plugged into Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp, Discord, and WeChat. Um, the goal was to reach as many people as possible so that everyone with an outstanding pre-order was counted. Adam, how long was that form made available? How many customers filled it out?
I was just actually talking with a customer that came out of kind of the woodwork not that long ago, so I had to kind of summarize it for him a little bit. And I was trying to remember that. I want to say we officially said it was going to be open for like a month, but it ended up, we kept it open and kept taking more. I want to say it was almost 3 months that we collected data so we can get more, because I knew there would be late people coming to the game. I mean, you guys and everybody on the community did such an awesome job spreading the word. I mean, I don't get, like you said, just like your reach is only so far. I only stay on Instagram. I never jumped into the Discord movement. And WeChat is mostly for a specific group that I don't really interact with as much. WhatsApp I use just to contact, Tracy and a couple other people. And so it was great that everybody got the word out to Facebook groups and all that. And we were able to get a large number of them. I want to say, if I had to guess, we probably got 90 something % of the customers, if I had to guess, that were in there, because it matched about the number we were expecting on the high end, which was crazy. Because our estimate originally was that would be, somewhere around a total that would bring us to about 40,000. And on the high end, if it was going by like the high end of orders that we had in the past with Rex, somewhere around 60,000. And sure enough, it was on that high end. And that was insane. And the fact that we didn't even get everybody at that number is still insane.
So we say 90%. How many people was that we're talking here?
Here, I think the number was somewhere in the three. I'm going to actually pull up so I don't get this wrong, because I want to be a little more accurate here. Just give me a second here. I should pull this up beforehand. Let's see. I have the data here. Let's see.
It just goes to show, though, how big Rex's reach actually was. Like, it was even a higher estimate than you initially thought it was going to be. It just goes to show how embedded he was on the scene at the time.
I think it's a couple things actually that came kind of in interaction in that particular with the arachnids. Was you had Rex was the biggest at the time, and it was literally when those figures were released was at the height of the No Way Home fever. That together promoted like the biggest rush. I mean, it's kind of the same thing that happened with, I had a similar thing. That's why I knew kind of number wise, a similar thing happened with the Mandos when those were released, because it was just after the season got done and those came out and it just hit a nerve. And I got people that came out of the woodwork that never collected customs. I actually was just looking about a month ago, kind of, because I was kind of in a lull, and I was looking something up for Mandalorian, and I came across all these reviews on YouTube of that Mandalorian set, the Grogu and Mando that came out back in 2021 or 2020, I think. One of those 2 years, 2021, I think it was. And how much that reached people I had, that never collected my stuff. people like M&R Productions and on YouTube and other groups that were just like they'd never had a custom before. So it was the same kind of thing with the arachnids, is that I think that would just hit. It was at the middle of that fever pitch for the arachnids, or the for the Spider-Man stuff, and then the fact that he was that big guy, that big in the community. Yeah, so we had, I mean, given the different figures, they're anywhere from about 300 to 350 level for some of these figures. And so total number of people was somewhere, I think, let's see, we got it down to 340, around there, about 340. And that doesn't include the people that came. Now you have to realize when we made these figures, we made probably about 10 extra each just in case, because I knew there'd be people coming out going like, hey, what happened? What's going on with Rex? Out of nowhere. And those all were filled and sold off too. So, I mean, it could be somewhere in about the 350 range. So long story short, yeah, it's about 350.
It's about 350 with an estimated total cost needed of about $60,000.
350 people, and it reached about $60,000 to cover the costs to make that. And again, that's using the fact that Brothers was kind enough to give us the price originally that Rex went with. So, I mean, the amount that they probably lost on that, if you're going to take that percentage out over the number of people and orders, I can't imagine what they lost on that particular also.
Okay, so now we had a target. You got to move on to the next phase, which is figuring out how to raise the funds to offset the repurchase costs. So what steps did you take to raise your funds on your own? What worked, what didn't work, and why?
Yeah, so the shock of it was I realized how much we had to get in to fill this. So I was like, okay, so that's a number larger than any that I've had to pay. And the key thing to realize is that where I was when we released those figures originally and where we were at the time that this happened, it's two different PhoenixCustoms, really. I mean, and people still don't kind of make sense of that. At the time that I designed those figures for Rex, that actually was the first, I think it was the first time, no. Yeah, it was, Rex was the first person that I started switching. Some things had happened in my life that I had to take less of a time to put into this hobby. And so I had to I wanted to stay in the hobby and keep it more of a hobby than a hobby business. And so I started switching to just being a designer, and I figured that was kind of the way I could stay in there. So I stopped selling figures before that happened. And so the funds that I had available to me as a business from that point, and that was 2 years before that, had kind of fiddled away. I mean, I'd basically gone from where I was a brand in the time of when Rex sold those, to that point stopping, and for 2 years just being a designer. And those design fees basically only covered the monthly fees for my design programs, like Adobe stuff to be paid for, my bank monthly fees, my internet storage fees, all that was basically paid just from my design fees. And that was it. And so everything else was kind of, once the money went back up to pay for those figures that I'd made, that had kind of fiddled by then. So I didn't have the money or the capital in the business as I used to, that I could even entertain being able to pay it off just upfront or even pay some of it. So the things I started to look into previously I'd taken out loans before as a business to kind of pay for a specific figure. Well, because there's kind of lulls. Think of payments coming in from resellers almost like as a mountain and valley, that you get kind of rushes of it and then not so much, and so there's downs. And so during towns, I'd sometimes have to, because a certain figure needed to get paid for and made, that I'd kind of get a loan, and then obviously the funds would come in for the resellers and pay for that, and no problem. But this was a huge number, and I was worried about that, especially since the only people I've ever taken a loan up from was on PayPal, and that requires a certain amount of income coming into that account that can guarantee it. So that was my first step, check with PayPal. And obviously they look at the last, I think it was at the time, they look at like the last 5 months of income coming into the account, and the amount that I was asking for to cover that, I mean, it was obvious. Like every time I pressed the button, it would say no. And then I contacted PayPal. They said no, and the biggest reason they gave me was, I don't have the capital coming in anymore. I'm not the same business. And they could see that. It was obvious just from looking at the spreadsheet that I'd obviously changed as a business. It wasn't the same as it was before. So that was done. And then I started chatting with some banks I work with. They said the same thing. Your bank account isn't the same. It doesn't have the same promise that you can take up a loan and do that. So those were out of the question right off the bat. That was my first checks. And that was within the first week of this happening. And once we figured out how much we owed for those figures, and I kind of was I was like, well, what is the other things I could do? I was asking around and people were like, well, can you sell your figures? And I was like, well, can I make that much from the figures? I don't have that large of a collection. I had sold a couple years before that a lot of my most expensive or highest priced figures already. And so I didn't have that big of a collection, but I thought, well, I'll try it. And so me and you had chatted with, I think, a couple uh, groups, and we even tried selling a few on, I think it was, I don't know if it was on my page or if it was on your
Geek
Geek
Exchange.
Over 40. Yeah, I can't remember if we did that or I can't remember how. Oh, I know it was. We tried to do it through some of the Facebook groups anonymously. Some people were doing it on my behalf, or I was trying to sell it as an anonymous account. And nobody was at the time. It was just like nobody was buying figs for the full price anymore. And I tried even seeing if I checked with, I forgot with, I don't know if it was with Tracy or another reseller, to see if they could do a secondhand sell of my entire collection, and nobody was biting on it, for that amount. So I tried selling it, and the only sells that I was getting at all was individual figures, 100 here, 100 there, and that wasn't even close to what we needed to cover this. So I mean, I tried selling that, and that just wasn't a way to make money. Tried to get the loans, that wasn't any way to get money. And so I mean, those are the only ways I could think of getting money at that time. And again, like I said, the capital in my bank at the time wasn't even a fragment of the amount paid to get those figures done. So I was kind of in a point that I didn't see how this could get done, and we wanted to help, but I was like, how can we do this? And so I think that's where you and the other group came in. That was so handy and so helpful at the time.
Well, yeah, and then on top of that, you were fighting another battle behind the scenes to convince brothers in Tier 1 to give you more time to follow through with your plan.
Yeah, I mean, they were more, they had to set up, time to make those, and Tier 1 was wondering if that was, is how many people are we talking about that we're gonna have to ship to, and is this gonna happen? And so, yeah, I think their biggest reservations were first that they weren't looked at as that this is their roles, right? This is my role as in this, that I'm just the shipper and I'm just the production. You're in charge of the rest. And they're wondering if this is going to happen or not. And so the fact that they keep putting people in place to help with that, and then nothing happening, week after week, that was frustrating for them. But they were still sticking through it. We were partners in other ways. Tier 1 was one of my big resellers also, and I've worked with brothers on projects, so they were willing to stick it out, and they did a good job of being patient with me on that. But I think the biggest thing was, how are we going to do this, and what's our way of moving forward with this?
Well, we started with step 0, which was basically you donated all your design fees back into the pot.
Yep. That was an obvious, yep. And then when we discussed that, that seemed like such an obvious thing to do. And I did
Yeah.
have funds at least to cover that. Yep.
Yeah, and then we started talking about doing limited edition variants, but realizing the conversation couldn't be just you and me. That's when we pulled in those other collectors that I talked about earlier. And then that's what helped set up a multi-stage plan. So this plan, stage 1, was selling all the various test prints that Adam has accrued over the years. There's about maybe 50 in total, along with some older vintage Phoenix custom figs. Minifigure Dreams, prolific presence on Whatnot, volunteered to run an auction at no cost, which was phenomenal because that saved us so much time and energy since he was an experienced reseller with an established audience. Later, we had a subsequent auction, so we had 2 auctions actually, which included more test prints and an additional prize of Adam committing time to help design something for an auction winner. Did you ever go through with that? Just want to follow
Actually,
up.
just followed. I have these when I go through tax periods. I always have to go back to these things that were in there. And one of the things I had as income was this thing, and it was like, I don't think we've ever finished that. So I contacted them about 3 or 4 months ago to see, hey, do you want to do anything? And they've just said, well, we're still waiting. So I haven't gotten anything officially finished with them. They haven't. I don't know if it's. I have to almost pull it up. They haven't committed to a specific thing that they want done yet. Yeah, so it's not finished yet, but it's something that they're waiting to kind of. It's almost like it feels like they want to come up with this idea that's perfect, so they don't waste the money they spent on that. So that's what it feels like, at least, because I did follow up with them, going like, hey, let's get this finished. What's going on? And it sounds like they just want to make sure that it's something that they want to do. That's in their alley for this specific thing. They don't want to waste it, I guess. But the other thing to kind of, I just want to also point out too, that Minifigure Dreams, what they did was phenomenal. They didn't have to do any of this. They have their own business. They have their own thing that they do on Whatnot. They have plenty of people that go to their site. So it's not like they needed to do this at all. So the fact that, he was willing to step forward and do that. And the thing you have to also keep in mind is he didn't take any commission from that. So that's such a huge thing. So it was only the fees for whatnot, which is required, and the rest all went to paying for these arachnid figures, which was such a huge thing to do for the community, that he didn't have to do. He's busy, he has his own he has his own avenue. This is something that he didn't have to do, but he saw it and what was going on and really wanted to step in and help. And it was such
But yeah,
a
we definitely
cool
needed
thing.
him more than he needed us.
For sure. So I just want to thank Minifigure Dreams for what he did and did again, because we actually held a second one later on that helped pay for the shipping costs for all those. And so that was huge. All the things he's done has just been so phenomenal. So I just want to thank him.
Yeah, and if you're wondering who we're talking about, again, it's Minifigure Dreams. That's minifigure_dreams. And you can find him on Instagram. And he's always on running on shows on Whatnot. It's always a good time.
He does some fun things in his shows too. If you've never been to, it's actually fun just for the experience. Go check it out just once, because I've been through 2 of them now with him. And it's kind of a crazy thing. Now you get some FOMO going through it, because you definitely see something like, oh, I would love to have that. But then you see the bids coming in and it's just like, oh, nope.
And he gets the whole family involved, and it's really a lot of fun.
Exactly. It's an occasion, it's an event when he does those things, and it's fun. I thought that was really, he's definitely earned his spot as a big presence on that site. So, yeah, it's fun to do. If you haven't gone to see his, and he's got some good stuff too, that like he's printed off those Spider-Man walls. He's done some unique prints for things that you don't see anywhere in the community. So I think it's kind of a cool experience if you've never done it before. So if you're not part of Whatnot, or if you're curious about it, I highly suggest checking that out too, because it's unique what he does.
It's definitely a good place to start. All right, so stage 1, auctions. Stage 2, the limited edition premium gold figs. Now, this is something that originally started with us joking around about doing like just different variants of existing figs. We decided on figs in question was a challenge. Ultimately, the characters selected were Green Goblin, Battison Batman, Boba Fett, Mando, and Yoda. Adam, can you go over the criteria for the character selection, like why it came to those?
Well, the first thing is like, it was just what you guys were reacting to, because I remember I was kind of pitching a whole bunch of them, and I was coming up with renders kind of quickly to kind of see what you guys thought of them. We went through a whole bunch of different scenarios and ideas. So like Phil, you could probably give more of the feedback on things that when you're seeing them, like what appealed about those. But I think when we were going through those and sharing those, I think we realized we wanted to, number one, get something that would, well, the first criteria was we wanted this to make as much money as we could to help the customers that were affected. So the more money we could raise for the arachnids, that's the key, right? So we needed something that would cost less, but also bring in enough money. If we raised the price enough, that would be for a premium limited edition.
The concept was when picking, at the end of the day, it had to be pre-existing designs, because obviously that meant that the plates already existed for those products and such. So yes, we're going to cut it down. But like you said, then it's about picking out some of the best ofs, and getting a gold version. So it's a really cool concept, how to look at it. And it was hard to narrow it down, to be honest with you, when you were throwing out ideas, But ultimately, these were the ones that probably have been your most popular figs throughout the entire 10 years that 11 years you've been doing this now. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I think some of these that we all kind of agreed on at the end that you guys gave me good feedback on, these were all kind of core figures at different points of the collecting experience that you guys fondly look back on. And I think that was a good thing, or that you thought were unique at the time they came out. And the nice thing is, if you think about it too, they all appeal to different themes of collectors. So you have Marvel collectors, you have Star Wars collectors, and you have
as well.
So we wanted to kind of grab everybody from the different areas, so that way we're, I skew very hard in Star Wars and Marvel with my releases, but I wanted to make sure that everybody got something that they could look at as a collectible thing on that is very unique and limited edition and premium. So I think it was nice to do that, because there were some that we left off that list that I look back going, how cool would that have been to get a gold figure of that?
I remember,
obviously.
Was it Captain America was one of them?
Well, yeah, Captain America looked really cool. I really liked, one that I didn't show you guys because we just the thought of it was like, nope, that wouldn't work, was a Spider-Man one that would have been really cool. But obviously that was...
Yeah, that would have been in poor taste.
Yeah. That would have been, right off the bat.
Poor taste. But I think one of the main things as well is we notice every one of those figures has custom elements to it. So having gold custom elements is a key thing as well, whereas a Spidey would have just been a gold fig. You know what I mean?
I got to tell you, though, the render of it looked pretty cool, though. But yeah, right away I was like, okay, it's kind of like, well, I forgot what movie it is. Like when you bring something on, you're like, oh, that's cool. Nope. And just drop it. Like even before people
probably
see
the sort of thing now that keeps wakes Brett up in the middle of the night now thinking of what could have been as well.
Yeah, if
I
you
know, right?
decide, yeah, I know. I appreciate the break.
Yeah. And we also, I think the other thing that was, we were very, I mean, the original ones that we kind of had approved just because of the fact that I think all the ones that we ended up deciding on that stayed were ones that were created for the Phoenix Custom brand itself. Because some of them that we liked, I remember we liked the Deadpool one, but that technically was a Gold Bricks fig. And so that brings them into the mix. And do they really want their name involved in all that? And that's kind of tricky. And then we also had so the Deadpool would have been a great one too, but we also had another one that was, the Mando was another, like if to do the more new version of Mando. I know you guys like that one too, but that's also a gold brick figure, whereas the previous one was mine. So those were some that kind of went by the way were because of, obviously some tricky things there. So these ended up being ones that were different themes, ones that were heavily liked by the folks when they came out, and ones that we thought would really stir up enough interest to get money to come in. And so I think that was kind of our main criterion when we got to at the
I
end
don't
with
know if you
those.
recall, but before gold was the thing settled on, I remember I pitched a purple Green Goblin
Yeah.
using the same metallic print they used for your Iron Man Mark 50.
Yeah, that would have been cool. And I think it's also, I mean, we were also talking about like doing different colored figs, and I think gold was the one that really struck a nerve, I think, with everybody.
Yeah.
That was like, oh, that would work.
Now the gold figs they were pricey, but they were also meant to be premium products. The kind of experience you get, kind of like when you open an Apple product, and they don't just come in like a standard clamshell with a card like you would with a typical minifigure. Adam, can you go over the particulars of that?
Yeah. So like, I mean, the biggest thing we talked about, I remember, was we wanted to give, if we're gonna, because I'm not one that ever, the products we sell aren't limited. I always open up for up to that point, we'd always open it, let people buy as many as they wanted within a certain time frame. And so if we're going to go limited, it better be worthwhile, right? And so, and we wanted, if we're going to raise the price to earn money, like versus the cost versus the price, this better be worth that amount of money. And so I think the first thing was give them an experience when they get the package from the minute they get it. I'm not usually about packaging. I could care less. For me, it's always been, what does the figure look like? Is it something that appeals? Is it good design? Blah, blah, blah. But this is the first time I really had to sit down and say, okay, what is that experience of a high-end collector getting a figure? What do they like? What are the things that they want to see? And the feedback I was getting is that the box should be, something that's unique and nice. The first thing I thought was, wouldn't it be cool to have one that's almost like as nice as an Apple product, where you get it where it's just like it's so clean and still unique. Whereas in this case, I was like, what if it had gold printing on it? That would be cool too, because it has that, when you move it around, it looks so nice and shiny, and it also has the logos. And I kind of messed with that and had to check with brothers to see what's possible. And my first instinct I thought it would be cool to have the render printed on there and then gold lettering for each one of the figures. But that was too costly. It would have brought the boxes costs way up, and the printers that made those boxes couldn't do that. So we just ended up going with a one color gold print that has the my name brand. It has that it says it's a premium limited edition, and then has their logo, like the figure's logo on there, and then has all the kind of fun stuff on the bottom about, like you know, this isn't for kids for choking, all that kind of fun stuff that has to be on every product. But I think I just actually, I think last month I shared the videos that I got from production on those. So they do have a nice, so when they open up, they're very high quality boxes, but the print looks really clean. It looks like a nice box. So we're going with white, and then has the gold lettering on it. And then I also, we had chatted about the card being something different also. So I looked into gold cards and how I could do that. And I also wanted to make sure, like I saw that Christo, with some of his high-end products that he sells, he has a thank you message. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if I could give a thank you to these collectors for what they've done, to let them know, hey, you did something special. This isn't just about the figure. This is about what you did for the community moment. And I want you to just understand how important this was. And so I wrote a thank you on the back that I'm going to personally sign. So that way they have the thank you message and what this did and what this purchase means, and then my personal signature. That this is going to be a tricky thing now with tariffs, to have them ship the cards to me, to have them personally signed, and then I have to ship them back, which is going to be tricky too. So this is an element that a year ago I did not have to contend with, but it's just worth it, I think, to have a personally signed card from me. So each one of those people that bought one of those gold figures is going to have an individually signed card with a number on there and that message. So that's making it very unique too. That, you don't see that a lot in the custom community. So I think those are going to be unique for the collectors that bought those too. And the gold that we're using too, I should put that for the figure itself, we initially had a gold coating that the minute we came up with the idea that was approved, I was like, oh, that looks pretty good. I like that. It looks great. But then we released the Mando, and the way that was coated was so clean. I started asking, I don't suppose there's any way we could do that in gold? And we tested out, and sure enough, we came up with one that looks just spectacular. And I'm looking at, like, as I have a test print of the gold green goblin, and it just looks so, it's such a nice quality coating too that's unique. So I think when people get these in hand, I think they're going to be really happy with how that looks in hand. It's hard to take pictures of it too. I tried taking videos and all that, and just every angle is impossible given the different light sources you can get. But when you have it in hand, it feels like a quality product, which I think, and I hope that collectors, when they see it, are going to be really happy with that. So that way they see that this money was well worth it.
Well, that begs the question: when can we expect to have these in hand?
This is a great question. So we're actually getting very, very close. The biggest thing was we were finished. So the ones that were gold coated primarily, that's Green Goblin, the Baby Yoda was completely gold for the most part, I think. And then some and most of the Batman. But the problem is the other two had a darker color that we thought would just be easy. We kind of did a test one of like a part, and we're like, oh, it looks easy. But then the actual production of it is much more intense than I had understood. And I think my brother's figure, when they're contacting me about this, I keep going like, hey, what's the holdup? And it's actually much more difficult for this darker gold to be coated. So it's been taking months and months to, and even the gold ones, once they print it, this isn't so easy because there's only a limited number of these parts and they can't make that many errors. So, if they do, they have to get more parts and recode it and reprint it. And so that's been the biggest issue, is the fact that we had such a limited number, the fact that this gold coating is unique and it's not something they do often, because of the fact that we wanted to make it better than just basic gold coating. That's the thing that's been holding up for longer than it usually. Like, if we went with that initial gold coating that I approved right when we did this fundraiser, I think these figures would have came out probably 7 to 8 months ago, because we really had everything set up for it. Like I said, these are all figures I've done in the past, and the print plates are already there. It's the fact that I pushed my production to go above and beyond on this one, and Brothers really came through and came up with a coating that is high end and unique. This isn't a coating you really see on other figures. And so I was really pushing for that. And because of that, that has made this take longer than it has to. I wish I could explain. I can't even, when they're trying to tell me how this is harder than usual, I don't quite get it. I'm like, okay, I get it, but not really. But they're trying to explain that every time they coat a part, how hard that is, and then how when they print it, they have to do all these quality checks to make sure the print ink is on that part correctly. And it's much more tedious and time consuming than other prints that we've done in the past. But the good news is we have the gold Green Goblin's done. The gold Batman was finished a couple weeks ago, because we had everything except the legs, because the legs actually, if you look at the render, have dark boots. And so that took a little bit longer to get those done, because the Batman, the rest of it was all done by a couple months ago. But it's just the legs took a little bit to kind of figure out how to do that right. But those are done. And we're finishing up. We actually just finished up most of the Mando last week. And I think we're in the middle of almost finishing the prints for Boba Fett right now. I just approved the arm printing yesterday and today. So hopefully all that's left is his legs. And then I'm also getting the capes made as we speak. And those are going to be shipped hopefully within a week or two. Then once that's all done, the only thing left is, I think next week, the last one we have to do is the eye prints for Baby Yoda. And that's done as far as I know.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and
So
so
it's going to look so good by the time they're done. They're going to be handing these to people when they retire. They'll be like, dude, where's my fucking watch?
Yeah. So it's taken way longer than I anticipated. This was something that was supposed to be a quick turnaround. I think I should have probably stood with the original ink coatings that we did originally with the gold, but I think you guys are going to notice a big difference of what this coating looks like in hand versus any other gold coating, which has more metallic flakes to it and stuff like that. I think you're going to see that this one stands out because of that. And I think it'll be worth it. I hope you guys look at it being worth it. And the print is really, I can't wait to see some of the, especially the darker coated ones like Boba Fett and Mando, to see how those look in hand, because the videos just look, they're so cool. But I mean, it's hard to see some of these things because the minute you rotate it, you're getting a different light source and you're seeing things differently, and it looks a little different from this angle versus another. So it'll be interesting. Anyway, long story on that one, but it's just one of those products that I think is a unique challenge that I've never had to go through, and I don't think brothers would ever want to do that ever again because of how intense it is, especially at the low numbers. I mean, each one of these, I mean, the only one that was 60 was Boba Fett. The rest of them were in the 30s in terms of total numbers. So, I mean, this is the lowest number we've ever printed ever. So this is also going to take a little bit of a hit to brothers in terms of the amount of production they've had to put into this too. So in the end, it's a lot of give to help out the community. So I think brothers should be given kind of a big round of applause for all the stuff they've done for this.
Absolutely, absolutely. So stage 1, auctions. Stage 2, gold figs. Stage 3, the Phoenix Customs 10th anniversary torsos. Why don't you go over that one real quick?
Yep, very quickly. So I actually, before the Rex thing dropped, I was planning on, that was going to be my 10th anniversary year. And I had a plan for all these things I was going to do, like a sig fig, these torsos I had and kind of in the back pocket of is something easy to kind of sell and produce to reminisce on 10 years of being in biz. And then I was going to do all these other things that were going to be kind of fun, and I was going to do weekly challenges, things like that. But because of the Rex situation, I didn't get to do any of that. So it was already kind of sitting there. And I figured, we needed one more little push to kind of get us closer to the mark we were trying to get to. So I figured this is something that could at least be done because it's ready, and also because I really wanted to do something for my 10th anniversary. And I figured that way we could kind of knock two birds off with one stone. I just kind of checked in to see how many, and I went to the Lego website, I went to the Bricks links to see what kind of color torsos were out there and available in that I could post on there. And then I checked to see with people what kind of colors they'd be interested in. And then I just offered that as the kind of the last thing. And the nice thing about these is there's only two sides to them. And there's a gold version and a non-gold version. So it's really just two torsos that it literally only takes 4 days to print those. So once the gold figures are done, this is going to take like not even 4 days, because I think we've already printed one of them, the gold ones, I think. And so all that we have is one of them. So it should only take 2 to 3 days to finish the printing. So it's going to be nice and quick. And then those are just, because if you guys remember, part of the appeal too was if people wanted to, during the gold figure purchases, if they wanted to buy an extra gold torso to go with it, they had that unique chance to do that if they bought a gold figure. So those torsos have to go with them, since so many of them ordered with it, with the gold figures. So those will be printed right after the gold figs are done, and they're all shipping at the same time.
So there's a lot of fundraising, a lot of stages there. Across these stages took about 3.5, 4 weeks. Unfortunately, in the end, we fell short of $60,000, but we did raise approximately $41,000, which made the most expensive reorder cost to the average consumer about $15 per fig, which obviously the ideal outcome would have been zero, but considering all the effort that was put into this, it's still a win in my book. But I want to take a second to reflect on the public sentiment during all this fundraising, because it was pretty much all over the place. The messaging was definitely growing organically, with everyone chipping in to help spread the word. But on the other hand, there was still a small handful of quite vocal and angry customers that felt Adam could do no right in trying to fix any of this. Anything short of him trying to take out a loan, which he tried to do, or paying for everything out of pocket wasn't good enough. We even had some collectors that were saying that Adam shouldn't be allowed to design for other brands until all these Spideys were completed. So the anger was real, and they were heard, because I personally tried to engage with those who were vocal, because I wanted them to feel heard and validated, because they had a right to be angry, but I also wanted to be educated on the efforts that were happening trying to fix things. Thankfully, some of those folks actually all of them were willing to listen. Some of them didn't change their stance. Some of them actually turned from opposition to ally and helped spread the word and helped do their part to help fundraise as well, which was very much appreciated.
Yeah. And I think rightly so, like you said, they should be angry. And I think that the tricky thing is people weren't understanding, because at the time when those figures came out, I was still a brand selling my own figures on my website to a certain extent. And so they didn't quite understand that this was not my product. I was actually just signing for it. So when I think a lot of people bought that figure they bought it and thinking, oh, this is just a PCB fig, right? But it wasn't. It was actually a Rex minifig brick fig that I just designed. And so many people didn't quite see that nuance. They didn't see that I was changing from a brand that sold their own figures to a brand that's just a designer.
That's definitely the
Help.
case.
It doesn't help when you're the one giving the updates on production all the time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that too is, I mean, I tried. So one of the biggest things is I always, when I went into this customs business, the first thing is I always wanted to make sure that, because I'd been in other businesses and I'd been in customer service, the biggest thing for me was to always have high-end customer service to make sure people were aware of things and could communicate with me about their problems and we could try to fix them. I didn't like whenever I had as a customer a problem and the brand wouldn't communicate or talk or fix or work with me on that. And so I was big on that and Rex was not as much. And so whenever brands I worked with wouldn't quite take up the bar, I usually, and it's the case still to this day, is that I think it's just easier for me to do a lot of that because I know how to do that. I've communicated with people and I know what they need to know, or I know that they need information. So I think that you're right. I think the fact that I was a point person on the information didn't help either.
It's natural, isn't it, though? It's natural. At the end of the day, if your name is still attached to that product in any form, you want to make sure that your brand doesn't get impacted by anything negative, does it? So, ultimately, like you said, you can't rely on another person who's using your name to have that same level of service that you're used to providing. So, I'll be honest, I've been very vocal from the beginning that I think you had very little culpability in all this, and I think you went above and beyond to make it right, more so than many others, so I can appreciate what that other people aren't as well informed about the process, about how things work and such. But yeah, I think it needs to be said that there are a few players in this entire sort of situation that went really far beyond where they needed to, and obviously you were one of them.
And I think, I mean, obviously, when you are affected financially in anything, especially when it's something supposed to be fun, like collecting is, and you spend that kind of money, I mean, you're expected that you're trusting that person, and so I completely understand when you're thinking, oh, I'm just buying one of Adam's products, and they don't understand. No, it wasn't. I'd be mad at that person for doing that. Like, why would you? So I understood some of their arguments on that. I mean, and that's why at the end of the day, I wanted to do as much as I could because I understood that confusion and that frustration. So as a person that's also a customer and buys figures, I would be pissed at that too. Like if CrossCheck or someone else was doing a collab with another person and I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, oh, is that a CrossCheck product too? I'd understand. So I understand that anger. It's just the problem. I think that we're having is a lot of people are emotional about this because they were tied to those. This is something that they loved. Collecting was something they loved, and this impacted it so much that when they look at collecting and the fact that some of them dropped out of collecting, and they're mad at me for the fact that that happened, and I don't blame them. But it's something that's so sad that this affected so many people in such a negative way. And I'm even saddened when I see some posts of people that are happy to get the figures, but they're so distraught about the whole situation. They can't even enjoy the figures when they got them. And I totally understand that too. I mean, if you're waiting 3 years for a figure, that's the problem, number one. But number two, all the emotional baggage that happened during when Rex left and all that. And then you have all that. When you get the figure, it's not as satisfying. Even if as well as we put all of our production engines to work and really did a high-end figure as much as we could, getting the figure, I saw a lot of people post that, I got it and I'm not happy. So I'm gonna sell it because it reminds me of too much pain. And I do feel really, really bad for those figures and those collectors that had those figures and weren't able to enjoy them in the end, even after all those efforts. And even though they support me in what happened, they still, it's such an emotional thing when they get that and they realize all the things that went into it and they just can't enjoy it. And I think that's the really sad part about all this is that even those people that were convinced that we were doing the right thing and trying to do the right thing is that it had that kind of emotional attachment to those figures and they can't have that same pride and joy when you get a PCB designed product, and that's sad. And it's really sad too that they had to leave. Some of them left the community because of that, and large numbers did. So
I'd be in the same boat if it wasn't a Spidey fig. I'm not going to get rid of a Spidey fig, but if it wasn't a Spidey, if it
Right.
wasn't a Spidey fig, I could see myself easily letting him go as well. Because of all the drama that was surrounding them and just the heartache and trying to wait what's coming next.
Yep.
But
And it's totally valid too, to be
all the
honest.
collectors you're talking about are the experienced ones that already have the inherent patience needed to survive in this hobby. you're forgetting about all those folks that, like you said, when the new way home fever pitch was high, they were buying their first customs, weren't used to the whole process, don't understand it's not like buying something on Amazon. You know, those folks, I mean, think about it. Some of these folks, they were in their freshman year, they were in high school when they ordered these things and they were about to graduate college when they came out.
I know. It's crazy, isn't it?
Those kind of people as well, they're the ones that are normally complaining just at the normal, typical length of time a minifig takes to get made, a custom. So when something like this happens, yeah, I can
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
And that
it's
I was
go
gonna say,
ahead.
I think that's, I mean, it still happens today when you got people that are finding out about this custom community, and they're not used to the fact that this is a waiting game a lot of times, even if you are not pre-ordering, even these people that announced, hey, I'm gonna make this figure, it's just a waiting game that we're used to it. I mean, I was a crystal collector for a long time until I realized, you know, that 3 years can kind of keep going, and that's like, okay, maybe this isn't so good for that brand. But it's we're used to. I mean, if you can survive the crystal era, or the in my case the arachnid era, and you're still here kicking, that means you know what this business, what the customs is all about. It's
You
it's
know,
a waiting game.
do you know what I've got? I've got a crystal pre-order for Rescue, Pepper Potts.
Yeah.
Yeah, but the biggest problem is, right, that figure still hasn't been made, and that pre-order's been around for about 4 years, 5 years, but it was through Rex.
Yes.
Jeez.
The funny thing
So
is,
I'll never get it, even if Crystal makes it.
that's funny you say that. The last 3 pre-orders I had for Christo were also through Rex. I had a Superman through him. I had the what was that? RoboCop. I was supposed to get the RoboCop too. So my last 3 were
Ah,
from Rex. So I was just like, well, whatever. I guess that's gone.
yep.
Well, if I ever want to sell my Crystal RoboCop, I'll hit you up.
I've already got the who is it? The
LCM?
LCM. I got the LCM one for now, but I'm really in an 80s mode right now, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see some 80s stuff coming the next year, because all this Lego release stuff has got me in 80s mode, and I would love to do a RoboCop of my own version too. So, but anyway, I've got that one, and that's kind of made me happy, at least that's been released and shipped out too. So
Well, it'll be a nice change as well from the superhero stuff.
I'm
yeah,
down. All right. Well, so we are in the present day. Spideys are produced, distributed. I closely monitored what I could from those who were negative about the whole experience to see what the reaction to the figs were in hand. And like you said, the figs represented a sour experience for them, but the quality of the prints wasn't given any kind of criticism. Are you happy, Adam, with how they turned out?
I think for the most part, every single release I ever do, I always learn something, and I learn I should change the way I do something. And I always, I'm usually happy with how things are. I don't let anything ship out unless I'm happy with it, even to my financial detriment sometimes. But I think when I look at these, I was happy because, number one, because even when we did the pre-order, I was kind of unhappy with some of the designs, and I adjusted it with Rex originally. And so seeing those turn out as well as they did, I think with the printer, with BF's printing, I mean, I was very happy with. I'd probably say 95% happy with them. There's always some things I could nitpick here and there on some of them, but I was happy with generally. And I think if there's any benefit to the fact that we had to wait at all, was the fact that we were able to improve on some of those designs or improve on some of the things. Now, I did hear some people's feedback about, like, well, why did you change this and not on the others? Well, it's because those were all changes made with Rex, and those were all print, or the pricing on those was set. And so if I improved even more, the price would go up, and then we'd have to raise more money to cover those. So I think people weren't understanding that there's more involved with that, because I would have loved to have had them all of the same standard. Um, but yeah, I think I was happy with a lot of them. Like I said, I was 95% happy with how this turned out generally. But I always I nitpick figures all the time. I think there's probably only 4 figures in my entire production collection that I've made myself that I can say, yep, I'm 100% happy with that.
I'm pretty sure you said in our last interview that you always look at your figs and think, oh man, I wish I'd thought of that before, anyway. So
All
yeah,
the time.
it's one of those things you can never please everyone, including yourself, sort of thing.
No, I think every artist in the world will say the same thing. They can always find a way to improve what they did. It's not, I mean, you guys, well, Brett, you take pictures, and I know you nitpick yourself all the time, almost
Yeah.
to a fault. And the same with me as a designer. I mean, when you're looking at things that you're creating, even when I'm making something that's going to be ready to sell, even to the last minute, sometimes I'm like, oh, is this everything like I want it to be? And then sure enough, like a month after I finish it, I'm like, oh, I could still do that, and I still have time to change it. But sometimes it even goes into the production process, and I finally realize something I should have changed, and it's too late. And so it's just the way things go. I mean, I, at least for the most part, and I think in our past podcasts, we've even talked about this when people ask me, what should I do as a new, um, if I want to get into this business, the first thing I always say is don't just design and be happy with it right off the bat. You have to let it sit. You have to go back like a week later, because you're going to realize things that you're like, "Oh, that could be better, and that could be even improved." And so I think no matter what, even with this 3-year layoff to get to these figures, there's always something. I always find that, but I think I was for the most part happy with how they turned out.
Can I just circle back as well? I know you've given credit as well to Brothers Figure and Tier One. But another person who I think doesn't get much credit, but contributed as well. Minifigures.co.uk, Andrew.
Yeah.
Because like in Tier One, my understanding was that Tier One uh, covered the cost of their own pre-orders for these Rex figs, and so did Andrew from minifigures.co.uk as well. So without him, this wouldn't have been possible either. This in itself did have an impact on his business too, because trust in pre-orders became such an issue that he stopped doing pre-orders. So he kind
Yeah.
of had to pivot his entire business now. He sort of revolves more around military stuff now than superheroes, because a lot of superhero stuff was still being sort of a pre-order back then.
Yep.
But I just
Yeah.
want to make sure he gets credit as well, because it's thanks to him that I've got these 5 figs sitting in my house with me now. You know what I mean?
Yes.
That's a very
I
good
think
point.
there's so many. So I don't think people realize, like Andrew just said, you know what? We need to get these fixed for and I'm just going to I'm going to take the bullet, and I'm just going to pay for these out of pocket and just eat what was lost. And that's a huge thing to do, to just not even take a question about it and just say, I'm going to do this. And luckily he was able to, like he wasn't so financially strapped that he couldn't, and he was able
Yeah.
to, but he still
And
took a hit on it. That's a big hit.
I won't say how much, but it was far from a small amount as well.
No, I mean, to be honest, so back then Andrew was also a very large reseller for Europe, not just the UK. And so he had quite a few orders, that would come in through people that weren't ready to take that shipping cost from Tier 1 or from Rex, or, those are people that, so there was a lot of orders. And so Andrew, he took a big bite on that one, and and he was super patient with all that too. So to be honest, Andrew has a huge thank you coming to him from so many people in the UK and Europe that were able to get their figs because of him, and because he stuck by it and just said, I'll do whatever's needed to get these figures to my customers. But obviously it took such a big bite out of him, and also was just such a emotional drain on him, because he'd constantly be getting peppered with questions from people about what's happening with these figures, and he'd have to put up with constant, whether it was during the Rex issue itself or during the time that we were doing the fundraising to the time that we were producing it afterwards. I mean, he was constantly taking questions. So the fact that Andrew stayed sane through all that and still was willing to stay in the community and do it, obviously not with pre-orders, rightfully so for the things that he went through, but he was able to take that big bite. So yeah, you're right. He deserves a huge mention in this podcast also, if we're talking about Rex, the fact that he was able to do that. And Tier 1, to a certain extent also, luckily they didn't pay for all those. I don't think they paid for all of those up front. So the luckily thing for Tier 1 is they did take a bite out of a lot of things, but not as much. Andrew took a huge dent because of that. And I don't know the specifics for that, but I know that Andrew, all of the figures he had to buy up front and reorder it completely.
Yeah, this whole saga put a spotlight on the pre-order model, and Adam, I was hoping you could actually go over how you modified your model moving forward.
So, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's actually, so given what we did at the time to change it and how that has kind of evolved to this point, I think has been important to talk about. So first of all, so we brainstormed about, okay, so how can we do this so that people, because the biggest problem that we found out of this entire thing is the 6-month, time frame that people have to cancel their orders. So if you have a pre-order and you want to cancel that, with most credit cards, or most importantly PayPal, which is what most people use to buy these for pre-order, is 6 months. So if we were going to get this to work, and still, because I mean, since the day not since the day I started, because actually the first 2 figures I paid for right off the bat and just sold. But I saw that, there's so many people that wanted that Kinetic Man figure that never could. So I thought, for the next one, I'm going to see how many people want it, and then we'll make that order. So that way everybody gets what they want. And from that point on, from the Captain America from back 10, 11 years ago, all the way till now, I've always wanted to make sure that people get the figure if they want it, right? If they're there at the time, if they want it, they can get it. And so how can we make this happen and continue? Because there's so many problems that I think are even more of an issue of the ready to sell or ready to ship versions. There's so many people, and I remember the race that would happen all the time when people release it. You just race to that website and it's gone, and then you feel terrible because you missed it, or you
And it's
feel
one of the
great
worst
because you
feelings
got
on
it.
this scene. One of the
What's
worst
that?
feelings on this scene. And it's happening a lot more now as well because of everything that Rex did,
Yeah. And so, I don't like that feeling as much. I know some people like the adrenaline of it. I actually just like if I want to figure, I want a chance at it. If I've sat on it for a few weeks, that's on me. I get that. But if it comes out the day of, I hated that feeling. So I wanted to keep it going so people can still enjoy it and get the figure if they wanted it. But obviously with the Rex thing, I don't want them to be stuck after 6 months and not get their money back. So what our first plan was, how do we do it so that we can make sure that from the time it's sold to the time it's printed is done before the 6 months run out? And so we tried this. The first way was to wait until we actually get a test print, because usually when a test print's ready, we can just go right to production. It's just about getting the number of parts to them and then producing it. And that usually can get done within 90 days of them receiving, or not 90 days, 30 days within receiving the parts. And so that's the biggest issue, is getting from the time of the pre-order to getting the parts and producing it. And the only thing is, so we did that. That was our way to change it, so that we, instead of pre-ordering and then waiting for the test prints to come, and then we actually showed people what it was going to be, and then we wouldn't sell the figure until the test print came in. And when it came in, we'd sell it. The only thing is, we found that, and we did this with several of my collab partners, is you show the figure, people are excited for when they see the figure, right? And then the test print takes like 4 or 5 months to come because of different things. Maybe there's multiple parts that need to be made. It takes longer. So then the parts come for the test print, and then we're ready to sell it, and people either forgot about it, or they lost their interest in the figure, or some other brand maybe made one. I have no idea. Different things happen. But we noticed a huge slump that happened from the time of the showing of the figure to the time of test printing it. And so that wasn't working. We weren't selling like we were before, and it wasn't working in terms of the production. Also was having to, the minute the test prints would start, we'd schedule that test print, or the production, within, like, I think it was 60 days or whatever, just hoping that I'd get the parts there and we could just get right to production so there'd be no slowdown. And that was getting messed up too, because parts were getting stuck in transit. Yeah, I know you guys know about this. Shipping internationally is not easy. And getting parts from me to the production, even as streamlined as that was also still an issue. And it still is to this day. That doesn't quite work as well as I had thought. It's not just, I'd rather have a well-oiled machine that can get these figures done in a time that works. So we actually started testing some other approaches out. And what's working for us, actually, instead of a test print, is every single print location is taking a picture from multiple angles with videos and stuff, and sent to me every day the day that they print it, and I just approve of it. Or tell them to change something, they change it the next day. And that's actually less of a cost to them and quicker. And we've been able to just absolutely night and day change our production times on everything. So when we get to the end of the year, I've already every year I kind of do a end of the year summary of how we did all the figures that were released, take a picture of it and discuss, what was going on that year. This is going to be, the number of figures that we produce this year is way higher than any other year we've done. Because of that change. And so the difference is, now what we do is we're still doing the pre-orders, but we're actually getting them done in a 4-month period. That's what we're aiming for. So there's only one figure that I think is outside that range, since we changed to that model, from away from the test print pre-order to now it's what we just do is a pre-order and get it done in 4 months. That's our aim. And so, for example, the newest one we just did was the Cap figure that I did from Civil War. And so we just finished the pre-orders last week. I got the parts within a week, which is great. And so I just shipping them off tomorrow, and they're going to arrive because I FedEx them within a couple days. So that's going to start production within 30 days, which is great. So that's the aim, is we've changed our production model to be just more streamlined and more efficient. And so that's going to be a huge game changer. And so the thing that sucks, though, is we had all these long pre-orders from before that we had to kind of sludge our way through. And right now, when I was just looking at our production history and schedule, there's only 2 figures left, or 2 releases left, that are in that old pre-order model. And that's the Moon Knights with Jaka, which are all printed and ready. Just some little things to do with the hands that we got to finish up with that. And those are done. And the Miles and Gwen figure, done with the Miles, but we got the Gwen figure. Those are the last ones. After that, every pre-order that's left is under the 8 months, but also it's because we were doing the test print model back then. But so every printed figure that we've done since then has been under 4 months, which is exactly what we're aiming for. I think December on, when those other figures are done, every printed figure from that point will be under 4 months of wait, which is great. And that's kind of the standard now. If you look at some of these other companies, is the quick turnaround is something that we really want to aim for. And I think that's what we're aiming for in the high end ones that we're doing. And then the level up figures also that I'm doing with level up, those will also be quick turnaround figs. So everything is going to be changing because of that. We're still doing pre-orders at this point. I will say that that's not 100% across the board though. So there are some PCB figs that are going to be ready to sell. So for example, in the past, we just saw this last year, Brothers Figure released Namor at the same time as they did the Black Panther, and that was a ready to ship. So some of those are going to come out as ready to ships. And I think kind of to give a heads up, because I know some people bought or pre-ordered the Wolverine figure from Deadpool and Wolverine. That was just like last month, I think it was. And we're starting production on that, I think, next month. The only thing is Brothers has decided that all the rest of the figures will be direct ready to ship. But we're going to print enough to meet the same number that went into the Wolverines. So does that make sense? So some companies are still that I work with are going to be doing some figures ready to ship just because of either demand is that they worry that night might not be as high, or because they just want to kind of vary it up. That some of them they think it will be better because they don't know what the demand is, like level up, and then some will be ready to ship. So it's kind of changed. It's just that's the way the market is. Some things people want the ready to ship because the demand isn't there, and they'd rather just buy it when it's ready. But some of them, like for me, my own personal figures, like the Captain America, those are still pre-ordered, but we're going to turn them around in 4 months or less.
Awesome.
That's the goal, at least.
So, yeah. So is there anything, Phil, Adam, is there anything you feel that we need to cover that we didn't quite talk about yet?
I'm good.
No, I think that's pretty much it.
We
And
hit
I
a
think
lot.
the biggest thing, what we should also do that we did not do is that group of folks that worked with us, including you, Phil, and Brett, that helped me kind of at that beginning stage to kind of problem solve this. I want to give a huge thank you to all those folks. And I know we haven't really said their names out, and I don't know if they all gave us
No,
permission,
I
but
got
that group,
permission.
did you? Okay.
Yeah. So I do want to, first and foremost, thank, Sari, owner of Tier 1 Bricks, Brothers Figure, Nick, Minifigure Dreams and Dreams Jr., and of course, Andrew, minifigures.co.uk for all their help, because without it, none of this would have been possible. And then the collectors who contributed their time to help with all these plans was Hugo, Clone Maker 829, Azork, Phil, Cat Bricks, Marcus, Morks Bricks, Jonathan, JN36_N, Soonsal of Soonsal Chicken Bricks, David, known as BMF Brick, Ed, known as a Goodfellow Minifigs, and James, known as Click Bricks and owner of Secondhand Post. These guys, not only did they do a great job in contributing ideas in getting how we could possibly solve this problem, but they did it with the utmost secrecy and consideration for, and they also did, wrote a few reality checks, to bring us back, to basics, because sometimes, you get stuck in an echo chamber, your plans kind of can go awry, and they did a good job of bringing us back to reality.
Yep. Yeah, I think hearing from.
I just want to point out I didn't actually give permission to share my name, so you'll be hearing from my lawyer.
But lastly, I also want to give a big shout out to anyone who gave their support by either donating, purchasing the gold figs, auction items, or simply help spread the word when needed. The organic messaging that really is what made this successful. So for that, I can't thank you enough. Or I should say, Adam probably can't thank you enough.
Nope. Exactly. I actually on my desk I have this display case that I bought just because these figures mean so much more to me, these gold figures and the things that happen, because it's a constant reminder of how amazing and glad I am to be part of this community of collectors and Lego lovers, AFOLs, whatever you want to call them. And the fact that they were so supportive at that time, when things were so dark for so many people, especially myself too, and to get light to this community when they needed it, to give them that support, to give people that were hurting at the time know that, there's someone else out there that's willing to step up and help out in a hard situation. And to do that and the different ways that they did, whether it be from Minifigure Dreams, giving his time and energy to that, to you guys in that collecting group giving your thoughts and feedback when really you have your own things and you could have said screw that and you didn't, to every single person that, even the people that didn't even purchase a figure, the people that went online and shared stuff, even doing something as simple that they couldn't afford a figure, but you know what, they're willing to share it on their page. Everybody stepped up, and I think there's nothing I can say to thank them enough for the effort they did to get people out of that dark place and to get us through this
Even the hate does.
situation.
Even the hate does, because all publicity is good publicity.
And the funny thing is, I've talked to several people, no, not all of them, but several people, and Brett mentioned this before, that were very negative to me, even tagged me in stories, and we had long chats together, and no matter what I could say, that we were negative. But at the end of this, after seeing all the things that happened in the community, even gave me at least a respectful, whether they tagged me in a story or just gave me a quick message saying, I'm still not happy with you, but I respect what you did. And I at least can feel better about that coming out of all this than, and I think that makes a big difference. So all the effort that you guys put into this, the help and support that you guys gave me personally, and all these people that contributed their time and their efforts and their money was such a huge thing. And I don't think I'll ever be able to repay people for the things that they did at that point. And I don't think these customers can thank them enough for what they did to help them get their stuff and get them through this.
So we're looking forward to see about another week. You should be doing your October updates.
Yeah. So next week I should have some more. And I'm going to share some videos of the prints to see what, so you guys can see what these gold figures are looking like. Cause I'm loving some of these videos I'm seeing. And so I think you guys are going to like what you got with, and all the other figures you'll see, like I said, all the updates will be coming next week. And I think we're in a better place production wise. And as a community, I think we're starting to get that upward trend again, where people are feeling like they know what their role or how they feel comfortable. And I think people are buying figures again, which is great. So I just, it's good to be in a place where we're at now. I just, it's too bad that we had to go through something like what Rex did. So at least we, at least, like I said, we're through it. At least it feels like it. And once these gold figures are shipped out, hopefully in the next couple weeks or 3 weeks or so.
Yeah, let's get it before Christmas.
Yeah, exactly. That's the goal. And the thing is, I think it's the biggest problem is that we can't put a number on, like our goal is the figures are going to be done printed. It's whether we get all these things, like the capes are coming from, I'm actually getting help from folks in the UK that are going to do it, and they're shipping it to production. We'll see how long that takes. There's things that I'm shipping here from the US, back and forth. Like I said, I'm going to be signing those cards individually. That's going to have to go back and forth. And we all know with the tariff situation and things internationally that's not so easy. So crossing my fingers that everything goes well and that those things can be resolved and that there's not a delay and drag out with any of those things. But it is possible. So, but at least that's our goal, is by next month, hopefully everything is shipped out.
Awesome. Well, that's going to wrap it up for this episode. Obviously, we had a bit of a lull since the last episode. We're going to try and correct that for the future. But if you're interested in supporting the podcast in any way, shape, or form, there'll be links in the show notes. It's often, of course, as usual, it's appreciated but never obligated. And if that's about it, we'll all sign off and say bye. Everybody say bye.
Hey, and also, it's good to have you back doing podcast again. But
yeah, it feels good to be back. All right, take care, everyone. Bye.
Take care.
I want you on my rack. I want to make you ring. I want you to unwrap. I want to pull your string. Bring me the next shiny new thing.